morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for January 12th, 2024. We have a lot to get through today, including heavy showers and thunderstorms expected across the southeast of Queensland throughout the course of today and tomorrow. We've got heavy rainfall also on the cards across central Queensland. We'll take a look up in far north Queensland, where a tropical low is forecast to bring some very heavy rainfall up there. Western Australia are expecting a powerful tropical cyclone offshore, and heavy rainfall also into the southeastern corners of the nation. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today over in the southeast of Queensland. Very heavy showers are funneling ashore now into the southeast of Queensland, with the Gold Coast Seaway picking up 82 millimetres over the past 2 hours. More rainfall is expected over the coming 24 hours as well. We're expecting these showers to continue right throughout the course of today as well. If we zoom right in onto the southeastern quarters of Queensland, I'm talking about Brisbane and the Gold Coast pretty much exclusively here, at least for the next couple of minutes. You can see some really heavy falls are now starting to funnel in ashore here. Tweed Heads, just south of the Queensland-New South Wales border, we've got rainfall accumulations there steady at about 100 millimetres an hour, and I do imagine over the coming couple of hours some really big rainfall accumulations are going to materialise around Tweed Heads. Now that is very important in this forecast. It means that flash flooding is expected there over the coming couple of hours, and I'm surprised that a severe weather warning currently isn't active for the southeastern corners of Queensland and the far northeastern corners of New South Wales, especially outside of the Tweed Heads area. This is what we'd consider as severe thunderstorms, 100 millimetres an hour, and considering this rainfall is just not budging, I mean, take a look at the picture an hour ago, there was still very heavy falls materialising in this area here, with even heavier falls just a little bit further north. So this rainfall here is stagnant, very slow moving, and these showers here are expected to really pile on the rainfall. Further up the coastline into the Gold Coast, currently right now it's a little bit drier there, but as you go a little bit further north, Coomera are currently experiencing a few showers, and you can see as we play through the 1 hour radar loop that this rainfall is just continuing to pile on across the southeastern corners of Queensland, especially around the Bribie Island area. Further north into the Brisbane area, pretty slow moving showery stuff happening through there as well, so isolated downpours turning into heavy rainfall at times across the Brisbane metro area, and especially across some of the southeastern suburbs as well. A couple of good showers moving through the area, and out towards Ipswich and Greenbank as well, a couple of good showers now moving through the area there as well. Offshore, plenty of rainfall as well to talk about, and you can see as the 1 hour loop reloads here again, you can see these showers very slow moving. If anything, they're moving quite slowly towards the coastline at this space. At this time, you can see that the rainfall is just inching a little bit closer towards the coastline, so I reckon some of the lookouts along the Bribie Island area, just outside of the Brisbane area, will actually pick up some very significant rainfall very shortly. I think that kind of goes without saying right now, that some significant rainfall observations are expected there very shortly. Now, of course, this is something that the forecast models didn't really pick up on, or didn't do a good job at picking up on, but the convective forecast models really are nailing these showers right now, not so much in terms of the intensity, but they're nailing the fact that there are some heavy showers very much in the vicinity right now across the southeastern corners of Queensland. You can see the Axis C convective model, which it has been the most reliable forecast model so far over the last couple of months for the southeast of Queensland, has called for these heavy showers to continue right throughout today. They should ease off by late this afternoon into earlier this evening. There'll still be a couple of showers. Moderate falls are possible, especially up into the Sunshine Coast later on this afternoon, but by this evening they should pretty much more or less clear out of the southeast of Queensland. Same deal for the northeastern corners of New South Wales as well. They will pop up again later tomorrow afternoon in the form of thunderstorms, especially around the northeastern corners of New South Wales, Woodinbong, Benaldo, and Lismore as well. A couple of thunderstorms possible around there, and then also thunderstorms extending north through the southeast and then into the central areas of Queensland. In fact, looks like we could get a couple of juicy thunderstorms around the Billawheeler, Warwan, and then up towards the Rockhampton and Gladstone area later tomorrow afternoon, so it'll be interesting to see what actually pans out there. But for the most part, the really heavy stuff looks like it is going to ease out of the southeast of Queensland pretty shortly. Rainfall accumulations, we never normally take too much trust or put too much weight in what the convective models have to say with the rainfall accumulations, but they're still expecting some pretty decent rainfall accumulations, with a further 60 or 70 millimetres possible for the wettest of locations throughout the remainder of today. And you can see they've done a really good job around the Tweed Heads area, expecting a further 60 millimetres throughout the course of today, which will happen probably within the next half an hour and an hour across some of these locations here. So we're watching the weather observations through there very shortly, just considering the fact that things are going to, the rainfall there is certainly piping up, and we will definitely be seeing some large puddles at the very minimum across the southeast of Queensland, which could turn to flash flooding at times. We'll keep a very close eye on the situation down there. Pushing the forecast forward as we look at a simpler forecast model, the ECMWF, you can see nothing in the way of significant thunderstorms expected right throughout the remainder of this week for the immediate southeastern corners. Tuesday and Wednesday we could see a nice outbreak here and there, extending along the coastal ranges inland between between Warwick up towards Kingaroy, especially on Wednesday. It looks like a couple of good thunderstorms are possible. Thursday will be a little bit calmer. The thunderstorms contracting towards the southeast of Queensland. We'll likely see some stronger ones down there on Thursday afternoon and evening, but again, it'll be interesting to see how they pan out there. And then to the central coast, Friday we'll likely see a good outbreak of thunderstorms there as a weak low pressure system wraps itself up just offshore. Saturday, nothing in the way of significant thunderstorms by the looks of things. Rainfall will extend over the central and into the far northern areas of Queensland. I'll get to that in just a hot second. And then throughout the remainder of next weekend and into early next week, nothing in the way of significant rainfall or thunderstorms across the southeastern corners of Queensland. In fact, it looks like a really dry period right out to Australia Day after the outbreak on Friday night across the south and the central regions of Queensland. So for people that are looking forward to a little bit of dry weather or sick of the rainfall across the southeast, that is some really good news for you guys. Time to talk about New South Wales now. Panning down here. We do have some significant falls on the cards over the coming couple of days. We're going to zoom right out here and take a look at the bigger picture. As you can see from the radar and satellite imagery, there's already some nice thunderstorms firing up here and there, just inland along the coastal ranges, inland from the Blue Mountains rather, further inland from Penrith out towards Orange, Bathurst and Dubbo's, where the most significant thunderstorms are at this time. We do certainly have the chance of potentially severe ones later on today. Down into Victoria as well, associated with the low pressure system, we've got a really meaty line of severe thunderstorms. In fact, a powerful hook echo here from a supercell thunderstorm moving through Lilydale and Seville right now. This is a meaty severe thunderstorm here. Peak rainfall accumulations in there, really heavy stuff, and of course a bit of a overestimation as per this analysis on the radar imagery. They're obviously not going to pick up 500 millimetres in an hour, but it gives you an idea of how intense the rainfall and the hailstones are down here. So if you live in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, especially out towards the Mount Dandenong area, it'd be very interesting to hear exactly what's actually happening through there, because there's some really significant storms moving through that area. Now, this is classic hook echo stuff. This indicates that it's a rotating thunderstorm. The chance of a tornado is also going to be there as well. Certainly be a weak one, but it is still going to be the chance there, and really powerful thunderstorms expected across Victoria throughout the remainder of today as well. Plenty of lightning going through there, and you can see on the convective forecast models as well, these thunderstorms going to rapidly upscale over the coming couple of hours before moving into the Gippsland region, then across the border in towards the southeastern corner of New South Wales. Some heavy falls are possible throughout the course of today as well into the mountainous areas, into the eastern corners of Victoria, especially around the Mansfield and Omeo area, depending on how these thunderstorms fire up. They will be few and far between, so don't expect significant rainfall observations, but there will be places that pick up 50 or 60 millimetres of rainfall from these thunderstorms, and especially into the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, heading out into more rural areas of outer Melbourne, and into the Port Phillip area. Big rainfall accumulations expected there from those thunderstorms that are moving through. Let's push that forecast through even more with rainfall. You can see another low pressure system expected to develop somewhere offshore from New South Wales, or materialise offshore from New South Wales as a cold front sweeps through Victoria on Wednesday. And this is going to give way to some heavy rainfall and thunderstorms forming along a surface trough line adjacent to the New South Wales coastline on Wednesday afternoon and evening. Now, not only are we expecting significant thunderstorms to fire up across much of eastern New South Wales on Wednesday, especially into the southeastern corners of the state and the areas around the Sydney and Wollongong area, some really significant thunderstorms are forecast to fire up in those locations, especially in the plain areas out towards Camden and Boral. Some really significant thunderstorms possible to fire out into this sort of area on Wednesday afternoon, so it'll be definitely worth a watch there on the radar imagery, and there'll be more coverage on the CyclonesOZ channel as well. But this is going to give way to some heavy rainfall from these thunderstorms right through Wednesday, Thursday, and then easing off Thursday, and slightly dry conditions through Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday by the looks of things, but still some very significant rainfall observations are possible through Tuesday and Wednesday night, with thunderstorms expected to fire up there, and you can see peak rainfall accumulations, at least on this forecast model here, expected to be quite significant, even for this time of the year from these thunderstorms, with 5-day rainfall accumulations expected to be around that 50 to 60 millimetre mark, with other forecast models suggesting far more rainfall from that, and that's where the GFS forecast model comes into play here. It's a little bit of a hard sell at least. These thunderstorms are going to be quite strong on both Tuesday and Wednesday night, but it's still a little bit of a difficult sell in terms of what actually is expected to fire up here. You can see there is a bit of a low pressure system expected to develop offshore, at least per the GFS solution here on Thursday, but if you compare that to the Eastern Relief forecast, there's kind of nothing on the forecast that kind of resembles that, and the Axis G3 and the Eastern Relief are also neck and neck with what they're calling for. The GFS are really calling for some really significant rainfall totals to pile on across New South Wales' coastline from that low pressure system that will develop on Thursday, but again, the forecast for this low pressure system a little bit uncertain at this time. I'd err on the side of caution and say that this isn't going to be happening, so the majority of the rainfall will be happening on Tuesday and Wednesday, especially Wednesday night from thunderstorms, and there is a low chance of rainfall piling on Thursday morning. But again, we'll revisit it in a future forecast update. Yes, there'll be showers here and there'll be showers lingering right throughout the remainder of this coming work week, but in terms of really heavy falls on Thursday and Friday, it doesn't look overly likely at this time. And let's get out of New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania before we shiver through the wild weather that's going to happen down there and head up into the far north of Queensland. I'm very interested in the Cape York Peninsula. A lot of interesting things is going to happen over there over the coming 14 days by the looks of things. And the forecast is still very complicated. Lots of ifs and buts as well. So take this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. Showers and thunderstorms expected pretty much every afternoon and evening right throughout the remainder of this week. In fact, some gnarly severe thunderstorms are possible later on tonight across the North Queensland area, especially further inland out towards Charters Towers, Georgetown and Croydon. There will also be a couple of good thunderstorms across the Cassowary coast as well into the Atherton Tablelands, but later on tonight some really good thunderstorms are possible and a very healthy squall line expected to materialise into early tomorrow morning across the far northern areas of the Cape York Peninsula and across the Cape York Peninsula just as a whole by the looks of things. Pushing the forecast forward from this as well, you can see thunderstorms expected every night across the Cape York Peninsula, which is typical for this time of year, but they certainly are going to be more intense than usual. Plenty of energy in the atmosphere as we head into the peak periods of the Madden-Julian Oscillation across the North Queensland area, and as such plenty of rainfall expected. At least 200 millimetres will fall across some of these locations throughout the remainder of next week. I know that's much more than what the forecast models are suggesting. You can see 5-day rainfall accumulations up here don't even tickle 100 millimetres out till Friday, kind of just around the Moomba area they get up to about that mark, but across the Atherton Tablelands, and certainly if places get 3 or 4 consecutive nights of significant severe thunderstorms, 200 millimetres is possible. So plenty of rainfall to go around. It will be hit and miss because it is going to be from thunderstorms, but especially down towards the Croydon, Georgetown, even across towards Corumba and Burketon as well. Good thunderstorms expected there. Good thunderstorms as well out towards Ravenshoe and the Atherton Tablelands, and then up into the far northern areas of the Cape York Peninsula as well. Thursday Island, Weipa, some good rainfall also expected up there from the thunderstorms that will be piling on. So the next 5 days are going to be really stormy, extending out into this weekend when they will start to calm down just a little bit, but that's when we start to see a rainfall depression start to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, this is just one forecast model. I'm going to take a look at the EastMLF and the GFS here, so take this forecast with a heavy pinch of salt, especially considering the GFS has been flip-flopping dramatically over the last couple of days. So we're just going to take a look at what's most unlikely to happen at this time. GFS calling, the EastMLF rather calling for a low-pressure system to develop north of the Northern Territory into the Gulf of Carpentaria at this stage and funnel a bunch of rainfall ashore across eastern parts of the Northern Territory and then across into the western areas of the Gulf of Carpentaria on the Queensland side of things rather. The rainfall here will be very heavy at times on multiple days through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, the 19th to the 22nd of January respectively, before that low pressure system looks to ease off, and as such peak rainfall accumulations are expected to be well in excess of the 200 millimetre mark, and you can see that here on this forecast here. 5-day rainfall accumulations, 7-day rainfall accumulations rather, expected to be well in excess of 200 millimetres. Now again, I'm saying this considering there is so much uncertainty, to give you an idea of what sort of rainfall numbers are expected across the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline. Now, of course, things aren't set in stone right now. Depending on where this low-pressure system tracks, it could get right up jammed up against the Cape York Peninsula, and as such, the heaviest falls will be around Weipa down towards Corumba, and some heavy falls will also be onto the top end of the Cape York Peninsula on the Coral Sea side of things. Right now, the EastMLF calling for this to be a more Northern Territory-focused thing, and as such, the heaviest falls are going to be lingering around the Darwin, the Melville Island, and then across towards Cape Westall, Nullarbor, and then down towards Groot Island, and then across the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline across the Northern Territory. That's where the heavy falls are expected to be as per this forecast solution. But if you take a look at the GFS forecast model here, you can see a much stronger low pressure system is expected to develop, and a much different situation in terms of rainfall is expected to develop as such, or in regards to that. So let's play this forecast through. Now, the GFS has been really consistent over the last couple of days, so I want you to believe that this forecast is going to, or be the more likely situation. Of course, things are going to change over the coming couple of days, and this is, of course, not set in stone at this time, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, but this at this time is the most likely situation. A tropical low forecast to develop in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf north of the Kimberley region of Western Australia, and as such that will funnel in some heavy days of rainfall across the northern end of the Northern Territory around the Darwin area down towards Wadeye and Kununurra and Wyndham. This rainfall will then continue through Saturday and Sunday across the northern areas of the Northern Territory, really beginning to pipe up across Arnhem Land and Kakadu throughout Sunday the 19th of January. The rainfall continuing across the Northern Territory as this low pressure system tracks across the top end of the state through Monday the 20th and then into Monday the 21st, Tuesday the 21st rather. It gets itself into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, depending on where this tropical low does emerge in the Gulf of Carpentaria, it will have a chance of becoming a weak tropical cyclone. If it can spin itself up around Groot Island, that certainly does look like a plausible scenario. At this time, it will likely become a stronger tropical cyclone up to maybe Category 2, or on the absolute maximum end, a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone. But at this time, it's more likely to expend a lot of its energy across the Northern Territory and get kind of jammed up against the coastline, and as such, it'll be a much weaker system by the looks of things, at least on this forecast here. Tracking across Mornington Island, delivering some heavy rainfall there into the extreme northwestern corners of Queensland between Mount Isa and Corumba, just in this sort of area here, some heavy rainfall looks to be possible. But what's more concerning is the rainfall and moisture it will drag off the Coral Sea feeding into this system. We'll likely see a big band of just moderate rainfall that will last for days, probably extend across the Coral Sea through Willis Island, then into the Cape York Peninsula. Now, where it makes its crossing of the Cape York Peninsula, again, is dependent on where this system is going to track. If it tracks further south, this rainfall will likely get itself jammed up around the Townsville area. Where it's tracking right now along the coastline, which does look to be the most plausible forecast scenario at this time, the rainfall will be at its heaviest around the Cairns area, especially down into the Cassowary Coast and up into the Daintree Rainforest, with some heavy falls expected through there into the early parts of next week. Or if it tracks further north across the Gulf of Carpentaria and then looks to make a landfall around Weipa or Urukan, the rainfall will be at its heaviest around Lockhart River and that sort of area. I hope this gives you an idea of just how variable the forecast is at this time. There are so many moving parts to this forecast, it's actually very hard to keep on top of it as a forecaster, and there are times where I'm really struggling to make sense of this system right now. The Axis G3 forecast model, which is the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model, just calling for pretty steady rainfall across the top end of the Queensland and into the Northern Territory area, but with the bulk of the rainfall being piling on across the top end of Western Australia as a powerful tropical cyclone is expected there. Now, I'll get to that in just a short moment. I would like to summarise this, so if I have left your head spinning across Queensland, the Northern Territory, and you're not sure what is expected at this time, well, to be frank, I'm not 100% sure what to expect at this time. We're going to need to wait until probably Monday or Tuesday, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, to really figure out exactly what's going to be happening right now. I do expect a low-pressure system to develop in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf, and as such, if this low-pressure system develops here, which is very likely to, the chances of the Gulf of Carpentaria low-pressure system are very unlikely, which is what the Eastern Weather is calling for. Depending on where this system tracks, whether it heads towards the west, it will then become a West Australian threat, and Queensland, the Northern Territory, will only get a couple of showers here and there, especially onto the Queensland side of things. The rainfall will be negligible. However, if this system does track across the Northern Territory, which I'm giving probably a 60-40% chance of happening, 60% it does happen, 40% it doesn't happen, significant falls are expected across the Northern Territory, and then from the residual rainfall being dragged into this system across the northern end of Queensland, especially into the Cassowary Coast and the Daintree Rainforest, significant rainfall accumulations are also expected up there. Now, I hope that simplified things quite a bit. Peak rainfall accumulations could be anywhere between 150 and 500 millimetres. We're talking about tropical rainfall here, so the numbers are going to be huge across Queensland especially, and also parts of the Northern Territory. Again, I cannot give you an exact number for pretty much any location at this time. For the Northern Territory, especially on the western side of things, Darwin down towards Wadeye, expect very heavy rainfall over the next couple of days, especially the next 10 days, sort of between the next 5 and 10 days. Expect some very heavy rainfall there. The Cape York Peninsula, Queensland, it's a little bit harder to tell at this time, especially if you live on the eastern side of things. Yes, some heavy rainfall certainly is possible, but I don't want to be panicking people right now. It's not overly likely at this time. And then on the coastal regions of the Gulf of Carpentaria, you'll likely just see tropical moisture, especially on the western side of things, regardless of what happens, and as such, probably about 200 millimetres is expected there. Again, as a forecaster, I do apologise for the lack of a proper forecast here in terms of exact numbers. We're still looking about 10 days out into the future, and if you've got questions, concerns, or worries about these systems, then please do let me know in the comment section down below, and I'd love to put your mind at ease in regards to them. Let's just head over and towards Western Australia right now, and briefly before we get on to what the forecast is in regards to this system, I would like to talk about what the current situation is with the tropics offshore from Western Australia. So we do still have Tropical Low 09U. It is fighting for life well offshore from Western Australia, and it is expected to continue weakening off throughout the course of today. And we've also got a very broad low pressure system here offshore from Western Australia, north of the WA coastline, north of Karratha and Port Hedland. This system here, no threat to land, but it is dragging across a lot of moisture into the Kimberley region, also into parts of the Pilbara, and some really gnarly thunderstorms outside of the Fitzroy Crossing and Halls Creek area. These thunderstorms here packing a punch indeed, and I'm really hoping a couple of grey nomads out there get an absolute glorious light show, because just even at this time in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, we should be seeing thunderstorms this powerful. It certainly is going to be quite a stormy night across the top end of Western Australia. Let's take a look at the forecast now. The Eastern Weather forecast, we basically talked all about what was expected there, and what they're expecting is a low-pressure system to develop offshore from Western Australia, but a lot further down the coastline. In fact, it's kind of calling for the system that we're seeing that's driving these thunderstorms to very slowly meander and get itself together over the coming 5 or 6 days. Now, that is an extremely long time for a low-pressure system to slowly develop. In fact, it takes it a whole week until it finally kind of kicks itself into gear and becomes maybe a tropical cyclone next Tuesday on the 21st of January. January, so nearly 10 days out into the future. And that's why I'm saying that the ECMWF is a really unreliable forecast model at this time, because it kind of doesn't make sense. What also doesn't make sense is just how big this system is. I mean, as a tropical cyclone here, when you're talking about Category 1 systems across Western Australian waters, they're normally pretty tight and compact systems. Now, I'm not saying that this is entirely impossible at this time, but this is a huge tropical low Category 1 strength system. This would break a record for surface area. I mean, it's basically the size of the Northern Territory as a tropical low, with its impact reaching as far down as the Perth metro area. Of course, I'm not saying Perth is going to get a tropical cyclone at all. I'm using this to demonstrate the fact that the ECMWF is a notoriously unreliable forecast model, at least in this situation here. So we're not going to be using the ECMWF. Let's look at the GFS forecast model. I think the GFS is going to be the most unreliable situation here. It's going to call for this system to develop in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf sometime around sort of Friday or Saturday the 17th or 18th of January. As such, some really significant rainfall accumulations are possible across the top end of the Kimberley region, probably 100 millimetres a day for both Wyndham and Kununurra throughout Friday, Saturday, and then in towards Sunday as well, and then maybe 100 millimetres or even 150 millimetres a day for Wadeye on the same days, and the same deal for Darwin as well. So some really significant rainfall accumulations possible up there, with peak rainfall accumulations, at least from the GFS, which is a notorious low ball, might I add, up to about 300 or 400 millimetres here across the top end of the Northern Territory. Again, low ball rainfall accumulations from the GFS. We could be seeing much more than that. We will wait and see on how this system does plan out. The axis is the kind of the sore thumb at this time. The other forecast models have been calling for a really powerful tropical cyclone day after day, and the axis G3 has finally jumped on board with that, but they're calling for a really interesting forecast from this system here, calling for it to rapidly develop as a low pressure system, and I mean explodes in intensity throughout Monday the 20th of January down to about Category 4 status. By the looks of things, it's probably a top end Category 4 strength tropical cyclone at this time, with peak wind speeds here of about 75 to 80 knots, so very strong indeed, with those wind gusts extending well into the 100 knot mark out towards about 110 to 120 knots here, and then moving into the northern parts of Western Australia between Broome and Derby. Now, this is not going to happen, and for quite a good reason. The Axis G3, when it picks up on a tropical cyclone or something that it can spin out into be a very powerful system, because it has a bias for thunderstorms, it can really intensify thunderstorms on its forecast quite dramatically. The supercomputer just takes these tropical cyclones to town and creates absolute monsters on this system. So do not be fooled, especially when you're traveling through Facebook and looking at some of the weather groups there. I've seen quite a few guys using the Axis forecast model exclusively for this system here. Not only does it often overestimate in terms of rainfall across Western Australia, but it also dramatically overestimates in terms of tropical cyclone intensity. So be warned, the Axis, although it's calling for a very powerful tropical cyclone, whilst it is a possible scenario at this time, considering the other forecast models are not calling for it, I'm going to say that this is a very unlikely forecast situation at this time. The hard fact is, for Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Queensland, there's still so much uncertainty, and I'm not going to be able to give you a definite answer until at least Tuesday or Wednesday at this time, just considering the uncertainty with these systems here. And again, I profusely apologise for that. I know that is a big letdown to hear as a forecaster, or someone watching a forecaster here. That is a big letdown to hear. There is still so much uncertainty here in terms of rainfall, wind speeds, where this system is going to be tracking, that I really cannot wrap my head around the other forecast models being really inconsistent at this time. Hopefully, over the coming couple of days, I'll get a much better picture out for you guys, so stay tuned. If you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. And on that note, I'm going to end this video. I do apologise for how late it has been. I've had problems with the Windy software. I was unwell yesterday, and you can probably hear it in my voice today, so I do apologise for the late upload today, but it is closer to the afternoon, and it's a Sunday, so please forgive me. Anyways, a special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. I could not run this show without them. That is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.